On your Wednesday episode of Locked On Raptors, Masai Ujiri speaks. We'll get into what he had to say at his end-of-season press conference, including some musings on the long game.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Wednesday, April the 16th, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 11 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on Blue Sky. You can also join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server, and we are on Instagram as well. Please support the Discord. 100% free to join. Link in the description of the podcast. Come hang out with the little sickos in there. Of course, you can also subscribe for free to the daily Locked On Raptors newsletter. QR code on the screen. If you're watching on YouTube, link in the description of the podcast. If you're listening on audio, it is 100% free, and you get cool emails from me 5 days a week where I'm writing about your local basketball team. Lots of stuff from end-of-season pressers from the players, Darko Rajakovic and Masai Ujiri over the course of the first 3 days of this week. We'll have, of course, plenty more stuff, draft talk, end-of-season review stuff on various players, looking ahead to next season, etc., all going on in the newsletter. Please go subscribe. It makes me feel very warm and fuzzy inside when you do. All right, on today's show, we are putting a bow in the ear as Masai Ujiri spoke with the assembled media today at OVO Athletic Center. I was down there, and a lot of train rides this week with multiple trips to OVO for this end-of-season stuff. But I'm there for you, baby. And yeah, Masai, we're going to get into sort of some thoughts he had on sort of the larger dynamics shaping the future of the sport and the league and team building that I thought were interesting. We'll get into. We will have a listener question where we kind of put a bow on things, I think, in a very tidy fashion from a lovely listener. And then we'll start off here, I think, with just Masai's overall view on the Brandon Ingram trade and where it fits into this team's rebuild and the draft pick sort of considerations that were ongoing throughout this season. And I think my overarching takeaway from hearing Masai talk, and frankly from hearing everyone talk this week, Darko Rajakovic yesterday, all the players on Monday, I do think it feels pretty clear from everything we've heard this week that the franchise seems to once again know its direction. We know this was a thing that was very unclear for quite some time. The will they, won't they with Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, even going back towards before that with Fred VanVleet and the Jakob Poeltl trade at the 2023 deadline, where everyone's like, really, you're making a trade now while you're this bad and pushing for the play-in? Okay, only to lose in the play-in. They were in the wilderness there for a couple of years. There's no doubt about it. There were some rough choices made, but I do think this season just felt like, and it seems like everyone felt this, a real kind of step in the right direction away from all of that. And I think the Brandon Ingram trade, kind of fits in nicely into this whole thing in this conversation. Masai was asked about, I think by Josh Bloomberg of TSN, about sort of what went into the decision to expedite the rebuild, as it were, when they went to go trade for Brandon Ingram. And I think Masai, his response was, I think, interesting in that he didn't really declare that the rebuild was over by any means. He even said, this didn't hurt our rebuild, didn't hurt our plans. It's just kind of another thing, and we're back on the path, and we continue on the path that we were on. And his whole thing was, it was just really about acquiring some talent and being in the market that they are. They do have to get creative with the way they acquire talent. This is not a free agent destination necessarily. And, as much as they care about the draft, and they obviously, and Masai talked a lot about how his favorite thing in the business still is scouting players and, combing for guys who might be available in the draft one day. He talked a lot about that and draft philosophy and all that stuff. But I think the core of it all here is that he's not beholden to the sort of standard, oh, well, you have to be bad for many years and accrue draft picks, and then that's when you're allowed to go get talent. I think the big takeaway here is Masai Ujiri and the Raptors front office in general, kind of don't give a damn at what point talent is added to the team. It's just adding talent is a good thing. And I think the fact that Ingram didn't play down the stretch and that the Raptors, as much as they won some games in the last couple months, didn't derail their lottery odds too severely with the back part of the season, with the schedule being what it was and all of that. I think they feel a little bit like they kind of had their cake and ate it too a little bit, where they got to get a pretty good lottery position while also just adding some real talent to the team at very little long-term cost. Basically, a first-round pick next year from the Pacers, who are good and probably not going anywhere anytime soon. And then, Kelly Olynyk, Bruce Brown, a second-round pick that's way on down the line. Like it just for the opportunity that was there, I get it. Like this was the logic that I kind of talked myself into during the week of the trade, where I started off not really liking the deal. And by the end of a couple of days of kind of thinking and stewing with it and thinking of the logic behind it, like, yeah, it does make sense. Like, you're the Raptors, man. You can't go play in free agency. It's harder to play in free agency than ever, even if you want to, because of salary cap restrictions and all of this, and not a whole lot of money around the league. And so, yeah, you trade for guys' bird rights, you extend them off of that. That's like a pretty fair way for this franchise to go about things. And it's a thing they've done to great effect in the past, dating back to Serge Ibaka, going back to all kinds of guys where they've been able to get a guy in the door and then keep him around. Jakob Poeltl being another recent example as well. Gary Trent Jr. as a pending UFA, et cetera, an RFA, I guess he was. But either way, I think it doesn't feel as though they think the rebuild is done here either. I think there is still an understanding that, like, yeah, like they're not going to go win a championship next season. I don't think anyone's under that illusion that next season is like, all right, go time, let's go win a title. It's just all about a slow build. And frankly, like, I understand if you don't agree with it. I know there's a lot of people out there who would rather see the team just go the full tank route for many years and try to accrue as many bites at the apple, as it were, as if we need some new nomenclature for high draft picks, because that's all we have apparently. But like, I understand those who prefer that avenue. Me, someone who just like wants to watch good teams play basketball, and I'm a big believer in the power of just having a lot of good basketball players and then figuring it out from there. Something like the Knicks model really comes to mind, where look at the team they made the playoffs with back in 2021 and look at the team they have now, all just done through incremental trades and upgrades. And yeah, they got a huge windfall with the Jalen Brunson free agent signing. They also spent all of the stuff on Mikal Bridges. We'll call that a wash. Everything else they've done has just been pretty smart. You kind of turn this one thing into something better, and all of a sudden you're sitting there with a really damn good team who is going to absolutely wax the Detroit Pistons in the first round, by the way. That's kind of what I see the sort of vision taking shape here as for the Raptors. And again, you can disagree with it. You can think the Brandon Ingram trade is not going to work. And a lot of people don't think the Brandon Ingram trade is going to work. Masai Ujiri himself even said today, like, yeah, we haven't seen it. We don't know. Like, nothing's guaranteed. We have no idea how it's all going to work, but they believe in Ingram's capacity to buy into what the team is looking for, and Darko Rajakovic's ability to elicit buy-in from guys. And I didn't really talk about Darko's presser yesterday on the show, but I wrote about it in the newsletter. Like, I don't know, man. I kind of am drinking the Kool-Aid when it comes to Darko Rajakovic and his ability to just kind of get dudes on the same page. That was a big thing this year too, right? Is like the culture got back to where it's supposed to be. Masai Ujiri gave that an A+ in his response when he was asked about that sort of whether or not that goal has been fulfilled after hiring Darko Rajakovic with that very mandate now nearly 2 years ago. And so, yeah, I think, like, again, you might not see as much clarity in the vision as the Raptors do themselves. I certainly understand that. I understand maybe being a little pensive about what the Ingram trade is going to result in long term. But the pure logic of buying low on talent, adding him to the team, and not having it be a thing that shifts you out of the priority you laid out for yourself this season, as much as, again, they won games down the stretch, a lot of it very much out of their control. Like, you played a lot of Jamal Shed and a lot of Jonathan Mobo. They just happened to be better than Ricky Council and Daquan Jeffries of your Sixers and Hornets of the world. And all those teams are loaded at the back part of the schedule. What are you going to do? And as Masai said, like, again, thinking about the vision, thinking about the plan here, we know that internal development is a thing this franchise values deeply, values greatly, has succeeded at before. And their calculation when it came to certain things like balancing the draft lottery odds and not playing Chris Boucher down the stretch, which was a thing that Masai dug into a little bit. All of that stuff is in service of the sort of grander vision of trying to get back to what the Raptors were back in the day. Masai even invoked the bench mob of 2016, 2017, 2018, that area in Raptors history when talking about the Raptors' young players. Like, and he said he doesn't do it lightly, and I don't think I've ever heard him really invoke it all that much in previous addresses. Like, I do think they're a little bit trying to go by the model that ended up winning them a championship a decade ago. And that's not to say this is going to win them a championship, because guess what? Most team builds are doomed to fail. You are more likely to be very disappointed at the end of a team build than you are to be happy by several orders of magnitude. That's just how pro sports works, especially the NBA, where winning a championship is exceedingly difficult, especially if you don't have one of the guys, one of 6 or 7 guys who kind of drive the title picture every single year. You got to get lucky, you got to get smart, and you got to do a little bit unorthodox. And the Raptors, I think, again, disagree with where they're at. I have no problem with it because it means we get to watch fun, interesting, probably mid-40s, year 50 win basketball next season if everything breaks super right. That sounds great to me. That's what I'm in this for, is watching cool, fun basketball. But yeah, whether you agree with it or not, it's clear they kind of have a plan and a direction and a vision, and they're sticking to it. And the Ingram trade is not the end point of that vision or that plan. It's just a piece along the way of a grander plan, which is essentially just get a lot of good players, figure it out from there, which is, I think, a pretty admirable way to go about building a team, especially in a league of parity, which Masai talked a lot about parity. Another thing Masai talked a lot about was the thing that caused parity, which is the CBA, and that, among other sort of big, picture sort of forces at play shaping the future of the league. We're going to get into that. I thought he had some pretty interesting thoughts on not just the new CBA and team building rules, but also, geopolitics and stuff like that. We will do that and dig into that coming up in just one second here on the show. Today's show is brought to you by friends over at Open Phone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about it. When was the last time you had a service emergency? If the first person didn't answer, did you wait? Probably not. That's why you need Open Phone. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system designed to streamline and scale your customer communications all through an app on your phone or computer. You love that you don't got to carry multiple phones. It's all just there in one phone. With Open Phone, you can manage business calls and text from one app, whether on your desk or on the go. And yeah, your favorite feature, it might just be the shared inbox. Your team can jump into any conversation without missing a beat. You get AI call transcripts and summaries, save you time on follow-ups, and ensures that you never lose track of customer interactions. Open Phone is offering my listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedInNBA. That's OPENPHONE.com/LockedInNBA. If you're switching from another service, Open Phone will even port your existing numbers over at no extra charge. Open Phone, no missed calls, no missed customers. Today's show is also brought to you by the Amazon Fire TV Stick, which, did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Yeah, gamers out there, you like playing video games? You don't want a gigantic console in your place? Don't worry, because your Fire TV can be your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick. 4K devices, no console required. Just pair your controller, subscribe, or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Diving into hundreds of premium titles, EA Sports, College Football 25, Call of Duty, Black Ops 6, Avowed, and so much more, as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. I love gaming, baby. I love video games. And the summer is here. The Raptors season's over. Guess what I'm going to do? Play a lot of video games between now and the end of the summer. Yeah, I have a kid on the way. That's going to make things difficult, but I hear you get lots of downtime while kids are sleeping to go play some video games if you don't want to sleep as well. Who's to say? Either way, go check it out. If you're a hardcore gamer, you can go and get yourself some Xbox available right in your Fire TV Stick. That's pretty darn sweet. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube, 3rd Gen. Go check it out. Wrapping it up here. Not wrapping it up. It's the second segment. Duh. We're talking about Masai Ujiri and the long game and the big picture forces at play in forming team building. I was very curious about sort of the front office's stance and view on where things sit with the CBA. We're a couple of years in now to the apron system, to the new CBA, and the learning of the ropes and the way it's kind of changed the market. We've seen lots of different ways in which the new CBA and everything that comes with it has changed the league. I think we've seen, teams get desperate and fire coaches prematurely because they're kind of in a bind when it comes to player personnel, and firing the coach is an easy thing to do when you can't change the players. I think we've seen teams like the Mavericks get nut and trade away generational superstars because they're scared of the supermax and the tax implications that might be attached to paying a guy the supermax. Very normal stuff. And I think we saw the Raptors in the early part of this CBA kind of get thrown for a loop by it, particularly when it came to the Pascal Siakam trade, which, hey, now in hindsight, they turned Siakam into Brandon Ingram, essentially, along with Jacoby Walter and somebody else. My brain is melting. Oh, the Blazers pick, I guess, is an Ochai Agbaji. Lots of stuff, I guess, in that trade. Ochai, the Blazers pick. Was the Blazers pick involved? No, that's a different trade. But bear with me here. It's been a busy year. But yeah, Walter, Agbaji, Ingram for Siakam. In the wash, it comes out clean, but certainly, and I was not unafraid to say what a botched situation the Siakam trade was a year ago, because I think they screwed it up. I think they misread the market, and I think a big part of it was they weren't really super prepared for what the new CBA was going to mean for players like Pascal Siakam. And, it turns out Brandon Ingram very much in that same mix of guys who are just below that sort of perennial All-NBA tier, guys who are not going to be the best player on a championship team, but guys who are still very good. I still think the league hadn't figured out what was going to happen with those guys in the market. And, Pascal probably ended up being like the last guy to get a max, and I think he got it because the Pacers were like the precise team to give it to him. The Raptors obviously didn't feel comfortable giving him the max, and I think they misread the trade market because I think they maybe thought other teams would want that, whereas it was just kind of one that they were working with by the end in Indiana. Again, kudos to them for figuring it out and turning it into something a year later. But yeah, I think Masai's answer when I asked him that question was, first of all, I trust my guy Bobby, the CBA whiz, of course. He wrote the previous CBA before he was hired by the Raptors. And he also dug into, the idea of it took them a while to figure it out, but their job as front office execs is essentially to figure out the loopholes without saying the word loopholes. But he did say, I'm not sure they want us to do this, but we figured out how to make it work for us and figured out the ways in which we can kind of press our own little advantages within the CBA. And I do think them hopping on the Brandon Ingram trade is an example of that. They saw that the Pelicans were in this bind, the same bind they were in a year before. You go through a thing, you learn from it, and you apply that learning to future experiences, I guess. And they said, hey, this is familiar. Maybe we can hop on this trade and kind of get a guy at low value or at low market value, buy low, et cetera, and get him in the door. And I think that's, kind of an example of them maybe kind of adapting and learning how this CBA works on the fly. Fascinated to see what they do tax-wise, if that becomes a thing. Masai did say that paying the tax will not be a problem if we have the right talent on the team. What is the right talent? He did not say that. He didn't explicitly say, we think RJ Barrett plus Brandon Ingram plus Quickly plus Barnes plus Pirtle is a tax-worthy team or anything like that. But always encouraging to know that the money's there if, things are deemed to be warranting the tax. And look, I don't know. Rodgers, I'm no fan of Rodgers. I don't think they're a company that should be celebrated in any way, really. But they just played Vladimir Guerrero Jr. $500 million. They just invested millions of dollars, hundreds of $millions of dollars into renovating their baseball stadium. They seem invested in sports. Maybe that extends over to the Raptors as well. It didn't seem like there was any kind of tension or sort of uncertainty or uneasiness on the side of Masai Ujiri when it came to those questions about ownership. He even said we've been working with these guys forever. They've always been around. Yeah, they're going to be in full control here in a year or so, but it's always been the same deal. I don't know. I think going back to the bigger picture stuff, I talked about the CBA. The other thing that's sort of a big picture, sort of seismic thing that could inform the way the Raptors in particular operate is, of course, the geopolitical friction between Canada and the US, the two countries in which NBA teams play. Of course, the Raptors have just the one Canadian team. And Masai, I thought, he didn't say anything too explosive. He kind of tiptoed. He got asked, kind of followed up a question about this, essentially kind of asking explicitly, do you think that playing in the States is going to help you get players here who are, maybe don't want to play in America? And Masai didn't go that far, but he did essentially say that the opportunities that could be afforded the Raptors because they're in Canada are already unique. Like that's always been the case, but he thinks they'll become even more incredibly unique, was the exact quote, in the years to come. And I don't see how and he also kind of wove that in with looking at sort of the NBA's expansion into Europe with NBA Europe and what that's going to mean for the player pool that gets broadened, and also talked about like what NIL and college basketball is going to do for attracting more European players over there to earn some money before they go pro, and what that might do to kind of, again, broaden the talent pool, expand the kind of pool they're playing in when they're trying to identify talent. And look, man, the Raptors are very good at identifying talent. You broaden the player pool that they're going to try to scope from, and I think they're going to find some pretty good gems in there based on their track record of doing this. And I think that's all. Again, it's not like an explicit, yes, we think that the global trade war is going to affect us, favorably because no one's going to want to play in America. But I think you can kind of draw that line if you're pulling from a more international player pool and you have America doing whatever America's got going on. Not to say that we're without our faults up here, and boy, oh boy, we have an election very soon that could change the tone and tenor very quickly. But for the most part, it does feel like, the Raptors are always going to try to press advantages where they are, where they have them. And, I think one of the things they've done in the past is trade for guys ahead of time to kind of get them ingratiated into the city and make them kind of realize, oh, damn, this place rules. Maybe I should stick around here. I think that kind of logic is going to apply going forward here too. And I just think it's interesting that they kind of have these big picture kind of thoughts floating around about kind of the way the game is going globally and the position of the one Toronto team within those shifting dynamics. I think it's a good thing they have that kind of on their radar. And look, this is a team that's always tried to be ahead of the curve. Sometimes they're wrong. Sometimes they aren't ahead of the curve. Again, I think they were behind a little bit when it came to what happened with the Pascal thing and the CBA and its sort of effect on the market around then. But, if you go back to like Vision 6'9", again, they were early on that one, I think. But the concept of get a lot of good players who are tall and put them on the floor together, like this is a thing that we're seeing. The league is getting bigger and bigger year over year. As it gets more talented, it gets bigger, and it's harder for smaller guys to hang. You have to be kind of elite to be a small guy who hangs in the NBA now. And I think their sort of read back in 2019, 2020, whatever it was kind of dead on. It just, they didn't execute it well. It's really hard to get all of the requisite skills you need to play functional basketball with a bunch of 6'9" guys, but the concept made a lot of sense. And in a sport where being tall equals good, made a lot of sense that they were like, yeah, let's go get some tall guys that will probably be good. And so, yeah, like this has always been a thing. They've always been trying to kind of think one step ahead of where the league is going, and that's a great thing. You can think all these things. You can have your finger on the pulse of all these potential changes and factors that are going to affect the way you build your team, and doesn't mean that they're going to succeed in kind of narrowing in on the right stuff they got to do to make the next steps. But it's nice to have a front office that has this big picture stuff in mind when you have other front offices, like in Dallas and stuff, doing real dumb, really stupid things with no grasp of the big picture. It's I don't know. I know there's maybe a bit of a sort of, I don't know if it's like a lack of faith or a loss of faith in the Raptors front office. I certainly think they did themselves no favors during the last few years where there were some pretty baffling decisions in there, no doubt. But I think you can kind of rest assured that they've kind of left a lot of that behind them. And I mean, just look at the roster. The roster is totally different. The culture has been kind of revamped. They're back to their developmental roots. There's a lot of stuff that's kind of ticking up after this season. And yeah, I think, again, Masai Ujiri did his usual, yeah, we're going to win in Toronto thing. He had a really interesting kind of comment on how much he like wasn't able to enjoy the last championship. And the thing that drives him going forward is trying to experience it again so we can actually savor it. Obviously, a lot happened during the Raptors winning the championship. First of all, him being profiled as he tried to enter the court by a dirtbag cop in Oakland, and all of that kind of spoiled that moment for him. And then, as he said, it was like, yeah, maybe it was that what happened to me. And also, like, the second we won, all I could think of, are we going to re-sign Kawhi? Like, what's going on here? And so, yeah, I think he's pretty motivated to, every front office is motivated to win a championship. Masai, I think, no different than that. We heard a lot of the same sort of parroted back repeat stuff we've heard from him over the years about winning in Toronto and wanting to build a winner and the end goal being championships, which is all great to hear. He's won the game before. It's not to say he's going to win it again, but I do think, again, they kind of got their head back on their shoulders a little bit here. And it's nice to see that they have this sort of larger scale view of where the league is going and trending, and they're thinking about this stuff. Again, you can be thinking about it and make the wrong calls, but better to be thinking about this stuff and knowing what's coming and being prepared for what's coming down the line than to have it kind of sprung on you and surprising you. We'll come back on the other side, close things out with a final mailbag question, which will put a bow on this season. And, we've of course got plenty of more stuff to kind of put a bow on the season in the next couple of weeks here. But I didn't have a whole lot else to say on Masai, so I asked for a mailbag question and we got it, damn it. So let's do that coming up in just 1 second. Today's show is brought to you by Skims, baby. Yeah, that's right. It's Sean Underwear Talk. I love Skims underwear. When I found out they were making underwear for men, I was very intrigued because let me tell you, I have a hard time finding comfortable underwear. I get hot. I don't like to be uncomfortable. I don't like to be bunched up. And Skims just check every single box for me. They're fantastic. They have multiple lengths. Sometimes I like to wear like a long boxer brief when I play basketball. And boy, oh boy, the Skims long boxer briefs are fantastic for that. They have shorter ones if you're looking for a little bit more of a comfort when you're wearing jeans or shorts or whatever it might be. I cannot recommend Skims men's enough for the fit, the comfort, the breathability, the style, all of it. You can go and choose from a wonderful selection. You've got, of course, the boxer briefs. You've got regular boxers. You've got all kinds of stuff for you to go and peruse, even those little tidy whities, baby. So go shop Skims Men's at skims.com/LockedOnNBA and the Skims stores. Let them know we sent you after you place your order. Select podcast in the survey and select this show, Locked On Raptors, in the drop-down menu that follows. Go check them out. We love Skims, baby. Wrapping it up here on your Wednesday edition of Locked On Raptors. We had a question in from our pal Jeff Exelon in the Locked On Raptors Discord, and I figured why not indulge this one because it's Masai Ujiri's presser. It's the end of the year. We said a fond farewell to all of our media pals for the next little bit at the end of Masai's presser today. Monday felt like the last day of school, but it was kind of like the last day of school after you've done exams, but there's still a couple extra days left to fill it out. And today was the actual last day. And so, the question from Jeff is, what was the good, the bad, and the from the season that was for your Toronto Raptors? And I'm sure we'll, kind of expand upon a lot of this stuff more deeply as we go forward, but I thought it was a good way to close this one out. Thanks to our pal, Jeff, the chief optimist in the Locked On Raptors Discord server. We love our pal, Jeff. The good for me, for those who aren't familiar, by the way, good, bad, way we wrap up every single episode of this here podcast on the heels of a Toronto Raptors basketball game. And in this case, a Raptors season, a thing I liked, a thing I didn't like, and a thing that's got me a little bit intrigued. And we'll go broad strokes here. Good, I would say the reestablishment of some real fun team culture. RJ Barrett had a really interesting quote on Monday when he was talking about the vibes on the team and the culture and all of that. And he was like, yeah, I've been on winning teams that did not have as good a culture and vibes as this team had. And that's not everything. Obviously, talent's going to take you far at the end of the day in the NBA, but you can build a lot on top of a group of dudes who are good basketball players, who like one another, who like their coach, who feel like they're kind of in it for each other and moving forward. It's very good stuff. And so, the culture kind of getting back. I mean, Masai Ujiri, I mentioned, he was asked, hey, what do you think of the way Darko's achieved the culture, kind of built it after that was his mandate when he was hired back in 2023. And Masai Ujiri's answer was a very quick A+, no notes. Awesome to see. The bad, again, we're going to go 10,000 foot view here. I'll say the offense. The offense was not good this year. It really fell off at the back part of the season. It was a thing coming into the year that I thought if they had a chance to be top 10 at one end of the floor, it was 100% on the offensive end as opposed to the defensive end. I thought just the collective power of A, their system, and B, the added shot-making juice of Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett kind of filling in as the gap filler he was so successful at being when he first came to Toronto, and Grady Dick making a second-year jump and all of that. And also the system itself, it's a system that generates good shots. They were fourth this season in effective field goal percentage, location effective field goal percentage. So the expected field goal percentage based on the quality of the shots from the places they took them, they just didn't go in. And this was the problem with last year's team as well. And look, part of this is they were playing a lot of Jonathan Mobo and Jamal Shed down the stretch, and those guys had wonky shooting lines while playing heavy minutes totals. That's going to sink the numbers a little bit. The offense was not good over the last quarter of the season or so in particular. But yeah, I think the process is good. There's no doubt about it. The process is there. The results were not good at all. And I think I'd be far more concerned about it if they hadn't just traded for a guy who can really help address a lot of those concerns. And I also think, like, can't sleep on not having Manuel quickly for the first half of the year. That is the most 3-point volume and some of the best accuracy on the team that just wasn't there for the first half of the season. The team didn't care or try in the last quarter of the season. So you're really looking at like a 20-game stretch where Quickly was playing with the team and the team was actually trying to win and all of that. So I don't know if the offensive numbers are totally representative from this season, but certainly they were a bottom 5 offense. That makes sense. That it's got to be better. The process has been awesome. The results need to start to match the process next year for sure. Hopefully Brandon Ingram can help with that. And hey, he's a great shot maker. They need shot makers. Seems like a match made in heaven to me. And the is, look, the defense was really good for stretches, especially in the last little bit of the season. How real is any of it? I have no idea. They certainly got some good shooting luck. They were near the top of the league in just terms of 3-point percentage allowed. That's not something you can really bank on sustaining unless you see it for like multiple years, year over year. Like the Raptors back in 2018, 19, and then the following season when they were just this elite, nasty, incredible defense. Like that felt like they were kind of inflicting misses upon their opponents in a very real way. I don't think I'd say that so much about this Raptors defense. Look, they're nasty at the point of attack. I think they make pull-up shooting a little bit harder for guys because they got much better at kind of navigating over screens, fighting. I think, Jakob Poeltl does a pretty good job meeting guys at the level defensively and not just doing a straight drop and kind of letting guys let it rip from there. But, still, like they're a team that is going to have to, I think, kind of build some reinforcement to the defensive steps they took this year. Scotty Barnes is incredible. I don't really have any doubt about him as a defensive player. He was like absolutely unbelievable. But what about RJ Barrett, right? Like there were moments, even Masai Ujiri said, like, yeah, RJ, I told him, like talked to him yesterday. He told on himself a bit this year because he did have moments where he could play good defense, largely did not play good defense. But when you tell on yourself in those moments where you try, that's something you got to tap more into. I thought Quickly did a good job at the point of attack. I think he was a perfectly fine lead guard defender at a position where you don't necessarily need elite defense. I also think it's interesting that the defense got better as Davion Mitchell left the team, but that's just a for me. Either way, like, yeah, the defense, I think there was some realness to it. I think, Poeltl and Barnes, you go a full season playing the defense they did together on the floor with one another. You can't do that by accident. Like, there's something good going on there. They got to reinforce it. They need more two-way players. They need more defensive talent to really kind of hone this thing in and make it a real strength of the team. But certainly, it's a bordering on good, I think, from what we saw this year for the defense. And yeah, we'll leave it there. Back again tomorrow as we continue the offseason. I might take another dip into the draft or see where we're at. I don't know. It's the offseason. It's really a decide what I want to talk about on the day of type of time of year, which will obviously get more draft focus as the lottery comes. And then we learn the lottery results and all that good stuff. So thanks so much for rocking with the show. We'll be back again on Thursday. In the meantime, follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend. Go to the newsletter, QR code on the screen, link in the description of the podcast. Join the Discord as well, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much for hanging. Bye-bye. Damn it.